make a couple of comments before we get started. Number one is, I'm going to remind everyone again, unless you sign up to speak, we can take no comments or discussion from the floor during our council meeting. The second thing is, we will probably limit discussions to, what is that, 2 minutes, Uolda? We can do 2 minutes?
If the mayor so desires, that's what it could be.
All right, let's try and limit, because I know we have a lot of people, I believe, who want to speak tonight. Let's try and limit that to 2 minutes, okay? So having said that, I would like to call the meeting of the regular city council of the city of Bowie for Monday, September 18th, 2023 to order. It is now 8:03 p.m. If everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I'd like to say good evening to all of our citizens, to our staff, and to my fellow council members. At this time, City Clerk, could you confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor. In council chambers this evening, we have Councilmember Acev, Councilmember Wolfley, Mayor Pro Tem Ndebumadu, Councilmember Hawkins, Councilmember Truesdale, and Mayor Adams.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will entertain any motions for the agenda additions, deletions, and amendments. And I would like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to take off the policy discussion on transportation only because it was accidentally left out of the packet. And I think it appropriate that everyone have it in their packet for the citizens and everyone to look at. So we'll put it on next meeting, but we'll come back to that.
Traffic calming, right, Mr. Mayor?
Huh?
You're referring to traffic calming?
The traffic calming, yes.
Are we really prevented from just having an open conversation about that tonight?
What's that?
It would not be okay to just have an open conversation about that tonight with staff?
No, I think it's fair to the citizens that they have a copy of what we're talking about. They see that and have it as well as all of us. And it's just, we'll just put it off to the next meeting because it was just a general conversation, but I would like our citizens to have that information so that as we talk about it, they can follow us much more easily.
I don't think there was any particular recommendation we were making tonight. I think it was more just an opportunity to talk about this issue that we've been hearing about for some time now. I don't think there was any particular thing we were going to necessarily vote on this evening, but I anticipated that this was probably a conversation that would happen over a few different meetings.
Right, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody had that information through the packet. And we'll just do that at the next meeting. We can put it on. So I've made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second that motion, Mr. Mayor. I like it.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same favor. Nay. Motion carries. We'll now move on to see if we have any citizen participation.
We do have, let's see, I'm sorry, Mayor. Yeah. So we do have one signed up for this evening, and then I just want to make for the record that we did receive 2 citizen participation comments via email, and they have to do with speeding, one through the neighborhood of Saddlebrook West, and the other one through the E section, and those were forwarded to council.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Valencia Wood, would you please come forward to speak? Valencia Wood? Not here.
I guess she had emailed me to put her on the list, so I guess if she's not present tonight, then she's not.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. At this time, we'll move on to presentations. I see none listed.
Correct.
Anything on city boards and committees? I don't see anything listed.
No, Mayor.
Council announcements. I'd like to open the floor for council announcements. Council members? Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem under Mamadou.
Oh, hold on, sorry. New gadgets, learning how to work them. All righty. I'm going to read a statement that I have to share with the community this evening. Just make my screen a little bigger. Good evening, community members. I first want to start off by thanking you for being with us this evening. 2 weeks ago, on behalf of the District 4 residents, I set out to establish a partnership that would create the first ever City of Bowie government-sponsored after-school pilot program in hopes to expand it to provide programming for all children within the City of Bowie after determining the success rate. Every year, we receive several messages from our constituents highlighting the challenges that stand in the way of hindering their success. Just this year alone, 51% of women stated that it was difficult to afford childcare, and 43% of families left having to struggle on how to best support their children. According to the state of Maryland, the average after-school care cost per child ranges from $855 to $1,274 per month for elementary to middle school students. Maryland ranks among the top 10 states with the highest child care costs, coming in at number 6. We have an opportunity to do our part to support the community not only in District 4, but throughout the entire city. Since my time on City Council, we set a strategic priority to attract different types of businesses and to create more job opportunities within the City of Bowie. Within the last 3 months, Councilmember Gardner and I have been in talks with Tesla to bring a service center, the first to Prince George's County, Sprouts to become an anchor grocer, Topgolf to extend recreation amenities, and Alamo Drafthouse Cinemas to replace our departing movie theater. All of the businesses are positioned to bring over 400 potential new jobs to the City of Bowie. What do these opportunities hinge on? Our ability to show employers that we as a government are willing to step up and provide the necessary essential services for their potential workforce to thrive and for our community to transcend. Many of you have asked me why now. 26% of Bowie's total population are children enrolled in school, and out of that 6,259 kids, 73% are enrolled within our public school system. In 2023, the county's public schools saw a decline in math proficiency scores across every grade level, with the largest declines being among elementary school students in the 5 to 10-year age range. In a comparative look at math proficiency levels according to MCAP results for grades 3 to 8, PGCPS ranks second from the bottom with only 10% proficiency, ahead of Baltimore City, which showed 7%. People are leaving Bowie because we don't have the necessary support mechanisms that other areas provide. Just this afternoon, the city received its second report on an armed weapon on the premises of Bowie High School. This is what our culture is becoming due to the disconnection among young kids. Bowie has been known to act swiftly and provide services that have not traditionally been available throughout the city. But I ask, how many carjackings need to happen for us to act quickly? How many times does our police need to go to Bowie High School and search for weapons before we choose to act? The opportunity ahead of us is so bright. And as a council member that prides myself on innovation, I have built the reputation of finding solutions and bringing opportunities forth year-long. This is our chance to do what we didn't do with Bowie Town Center, to act swiftly and meet the needs of our community with support and intentionality by allocating an investment that is only 0.03% of our budget, so that once we get to the next budget cycle, we can decide on the future of this program with the data to back it and work with our delegation to find larger funding sources. This experience has presented an opportunity to further expand the resources that support the nonprofits that empower Bowie. So I have personally stepped up to seek federal assistance from the community project funding in the federal appropriations process. Under guidelines issued by the House Appropriations Committee, each U.S. representative may request funding for up to 15 projects in their community per fiscal year, although only a handful of requests may actually be funded. I have personally reached out to Representative Trone, Hoyer, and Ivey to discuss and submit this request for Bowie nonprofits. The results from this pilot program will support the congressional request for funding. It is the honor of my lifetime to represent the voices of District 4, and until my community directs me to do otherwise, today I proudly stand on the integrity of my work and look forward to meeting with the Education Committee next week to draft a larger after-school program for the entire city of Bowie for the years to come. If we don't act now, we will continue to lose. We will lose schools, we will lose businesses, and we will lose our youth. Bowie has been a leader, and we should not wait for anyone to do it for us when we can do it for ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other council members? Comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to well, I would like to make one statement, and I should have said it a little earlier. As we continue to see the issues around global warming and other things, and we hear about the floods where 100,000 people are missing, I ask that we all continue to keep in our thoughts about those people and the tragedies that we face. We know when we talk about Bowie's Green Committee and other things, the things we're trying to do here, it's just a reminder to us that it matters. And it doesn't just matter here, it matters globally. And so again, I ask we all do our part and do everything we can to help combat global warming. So having said that, we will move on to the city manager's report.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, City Council and residents, especially those people living on Kingsfield Drive. I would like to say two things. One, we are hard at work at implementing the FY 2024 budget that was recently passed. And also, within that budget, we are hard at work at trying to recruit competent, qualified, and conscientious people to work in the city of Bowie, which is the hardest thing I have to do, is recruit people in today's economy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, City Manager, and everyone, as we help to recruit and retain the best and the brightest for the city of Bowie. Thank you, sir. All right, we will now move on to the consent agenda. I'll open the floor for a motion.
I'd like to move to approve consent agenda, item A.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We will now move on to old business. The adoption of Emergency Ordinance 01123, which is to appropriate funds for the following projects: the purchases, an additional $28,100 for aerial lift truck for Parks and Grounds, an additional $28,400 for upfitting of 13 replacement police vehicles, an additional $100,800 for automated speed camera program services, and to appropriate $162,200 for the well number 5 equipment purchase. I'll turn it over to City Staff.
Mr. Mayor, as you could tell from the packet, these items were already approved by the body in September, in April, and June, and for acquisition. And this is a housekeeping requirement, so we have to pass this supplemental budget to put the money in place before we can make the purchases. And that's the gist of this. And these are all items that we need and that you already have agreed to, that we need and should get. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Along those lines, at this time, I would like to open a public hearing. Do we have any comments? Thank you, City Clerk. Leslie Knitz? Don't say it, don't say it. Go ahead.
I'll help you out and I'll be brief with this, okay? This is a need, not a want, so vote for it.
Okay.
Good enough?
Thank you so much. Touche. Having no other speakers, I will declare the public hearing closed at this time. Any questions or anything from council members? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve Ordinance 01123.
I second that.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. We are
Mayor,
now going on to,
Mayor, I'm sorry, just to be clear, just because we do need 2/3 vote of this, can we just do a hand raise of who's in support? Just so I can make sure that I get the right votes.
I thought it was unanimous.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Sometimes it's hard to hear
Okay.
who's saying. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, B, is Mentoring Through Athletics Grant Program. Council will take action on a budget amendment to fund this program as well as authorize the grant agreement, Ordinance 01223 and Resolution R5133. To staff?
Good evening, members of City Council. My name is Lori Cunningham. I'm the Acting Assistant Director of the Department of Community Services. On September 5th, City Council meeting, Council requested city staff to create guidelines for a grant and funding program for mentoring through athletics. You have 2 items presented for your consideration. Emergency Ordinance 01223. The ordinance proposes allocating $25,000 from the city's unappropriated fund balance to amend the fiscal year 24 budget. And Resolution R5123. The resolution aims to direct the city manager to enter into a grant agreement with Mentoring Through Athletics. A draft of the agreement was shared with Mentoring Through Athletics for their review. The attached agreement reflects the outcome of staff interactions with Mr. Montgomery. At this time, staff recommends that City Council addresses these matters as 2 separate motions.
Okay. All right. Any questions at this time? Okay. At this time, I will then open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, and just for the record, I did receive 10 comments via email, which were all forwarded to council prior to this meeting.
Okay. Thank you. We'll start off with Ms. Sue Lavera. Good evening.
Good evening to you, Mr. Mayor and council. I'm not happy, and I know that if you had been here 2 weeks ago, and whatever, I don't challenge the reason, that some of this wouldn't have gone on. I know you would have stopped it. I know that, because very unfortunately, using position power, words, brought forth a wonderful idea, just not at the right time or in the right way. And I'm very open to being better educated about the process. But as I hear it, I'm a process person. As I hear it, was taking advantage of bringing something up that, while as worthy as it may be, did not include the proper vetting. And do you all know this group? And again, I have nothing against them, but I'm just telling you what I've learned, that this group has already applied for 2 grants from the city. They were awarded one, and I'm not sure the exact amount, but it couldn't have been more than $5,000 because that's the limit, correct, Lori? Yeah. So the second time they went to apply for a grant, they were denied. Now, do you know why? Do you all know why? Do you know why? Yes, no? You don't know why? Because allegedly they mismanaged the funds. So this is the group now, and again, I don't want to judge. I'm repeating what I read, what I'm told, what I've learned. And I look to you all to clarify this. So all of it, there's been a whole lot of stuff out there on social media primarily that has become, in my mind, very confusing about how this process works. I don't want children on the streets any more than anyone else, but I do want a clear, transparent process, and I expect that from our elected leaders. We didn't elect you guys to be fiscally irresponsible based on emotions. Please consider that when you vote for this thing. Better to think twice and speak once. So please consider this.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Stephen Warrenberg.
Not bad, Mr. Mayor, not bad.
Was that close?
Very good. Well pronounced. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Pleased to be here. I'm here to speak about the proposals and discussions of the last council meeting regarding grants to both Learn, Serve, and Mentoring Through Athletics. These both seem like very worthy programs, and I encourage the council and the staff to pursue them or something like them, but in the proper way. I will tag on to what Sue was saying. It was clear to me, based on the answers to the questions posed by Councilmember Esteve and Councilmember Wolfley, that Learn Serve was pushing the time envelope. They were unable to answer a whole bunch of questions that Councilmember Wolfley asked, primarily because it was in the, to be determined category. So I don't think that, to be quite honest with you, I'm quite relieved that Learn Serve has retracted that proposal. And I believe I'm most relieved because I was concerned that the council was standing at the edge of a precipice, a slippery slope, if you will. Whether considering a grant or some other mechanism that would require a budget amendment, the process for consideration was flawed and unfair to those nonprofits and grant applicants that have played by the rules. Personally, I would have loved a $50,000 grant for the Bowie banner and local journalism, but we couldn't apply because we couldn't, $5,000 was the most we could possibly get. So we did not apply. On the contrary, the city wouldn't even alert residents to the fact that there was a local newspaper, mainly because they were concerned that it would be perceived as picking winners. The city has a very clear grant process for educational outreach grants. There are formal applications, timelines, competitive selection processes, assistance for grant applicants, specified limits on the amount of grants. Our community outreach and education committees vet applications, and they also make recommendations to the council. The maximum amount for community outreach grants is $5,000. Education grants range from $100 to $1,000, depending upon the nature. Both of the proposals in question were substantially exceeded those limits. Of course, the council can direct the committees and city staff to award larger sums, but that seems inappropriate given the city manager's warnings, the repeated warnings about future expenditures and the council's decision to leave tax rates unchanged for, I don't know, a dozen years, forever. It's been a long time. And regardless of the outcome, there would be questions about why these two programs merited special treatment. Either of these programs could easily turn into a long-term relationship with the city with recurring costs, Given the cost of these proposals, it seems that the programs would require approval in the budget process for next year. As noted by the aforementioned council members and Mr. Mears,
I would just ask that you take a couple more seconds and wrap up because of the
I would like to take this gentleman's time. I've got 2 paragraphs left to say.
But we need to, the city clerk is telling me I need to
Really.
address this. Yeah.
I
So
urge-
I just wanted to give you a couple more seconds, so wrap it up.
I urge you to consider what an emergency is when you decide to take a vote on this. And thank you for democracy.
Thank you. Next, we have Leslie Knutz.
Okay. I like the premise of this program because it addresses, I think, some children that need extra help, okay? I was one of those children when I was young. I'm not young anymore, okay? The one thing I have to say, though, is it's interesting because when we came to voting on the budget, okay, there were some of the people that were voted for the budget, okay, are the same ones that want to vote for this amendment, okay, which is very interesting to me. I think that education in this city is more controlled by the county, by PG County, than it is Bowie. And I think this program should be put forth to PG County and paid for by PG County, and not by the city of Bowie. Okay? I also think that you should look at a game plan. You should look at processes. Should look at liabilities, things like that. They're all important aspects. Okay. With that, I will be brief and leave it up to you.
Hey, thank you. Next, we have Ashley Montgomery.
Yes, sir. So, again, let me begin by saying thank you, City Council, thank you, City staff. I'm very appreciative of another opportunity to speak before the council this evening, but I must admit that it is somewhat disheartening that I stand before you as an individual who has served this community for over 20 years as a volunteer and also as a 13-year certified educator in the public school system, defending a program that should need no defending. Let me be clear, we are not running an after-school athletic program. We are running an academic enrichment program with qualified educators that will implement a kinesthetic learning model which incorporates reading, language arts, and mathematical development into athletic skills development. In a published study, over 70% of students are visual and kinesthetic learners. I repeat, 70% of students are visual and kinesthetic learners. Now, most educators are trained to be auditory content communicators. This program intends to execute and maximize how students learn best, which is visually as well as kinesthetically. This ensures that we leave no child behind. Mentoring through athletics and Art Play Learn will not be using volunteers as the primary instructors for our program. My question is, do you really want your child's academics in the hands of volunteers or qualified academic professionals? Now, I've heard a bunch of different narratives, even a couple this evening, about us applying for grants in the past, and that's true. 5 or 6 years ago, we applied for a community outreach grant. We received it. 2.5 years ago, we applied for an education grant. Now, we had 3 interviews, all right? And I would think that we would have been shut down if the case was the fact that we did not have good, I believe, practices in terms of accounting. The reason we didn't receive that grant was because they wanted us to get individual licenses for a software program where we wanted to use community licenses. We had 3 different interviews. It should be on record, and I think that can be checked out very easily if someone wants to do their due diligence and actually check that out. With that being said, I believe at this particular point, each council member will have to cast their vote and stand by the decision with all of us watching.
Thank you. We now have Meredith Clements.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's nice to see you. So I am here representing Art Play Learn. I am the partner to Mentoring Through Athletics. I have 30 years of instructional design and curriculum development experience in addition to direct instruction. My program has 5 stars from over 750 students worldwide, and my in-person programs pull students from as far as Fort Washington, Annapolis, and Gaithersburg. I know what I'm doing. In addition to providing support for academics, we also have resources to help students with their social and emotional skills that they are lacking because of COVID, because of the shutdown. This is a really, really important program. And I want to point out that this is not a grant that was put out that we applied for. It's not that we came to the city asking for money. We were invited, right? So it made me so proud for once to get the city of Bowie to reach out to a city-based business as opposed to reaching out to mega corporations to come in and do our work for us. It made me so proud to know that somebody in Bowie saw my program and the excellence that we achieve and said, we want this for Bowie students. I didn't come here asking for money. I was asked to provide a service, and we were asked to provide an amount of money that it would require to effectively make that program happen. I look forward to the opportunity to serve my community and to serve the families who would love to do my programs, but who can't afford them. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Wright.
Hello, good evening. So, I'm here in support of the Mentoring Through Athletics grant program. I am a full-time working mom of 4 children, and I can attest to the struggles that there are to find quality, reasonable aftercare programs. And I know everyone keeps talking about the process and making it happen the right way. But as Mayor Pro Tem said, within 2 weeks of each other, there were gun issues in PG County. One resulted in a fatality. So you keep saying this is not the time. Then when is the time? This is the time. And if you act now and start at elementary, we can help some of the kids. We may not be able to help all right now, but we can help some and then eventually expand throughout the county. So just think about that. School just started and we had 2 gun issues in PG County. So take that into consideration and vote yes for this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Having no more speakers at this time, I will declare the public hearing closed. At this time, are there any questions from council members? Hearing, go ahead.
There's one question that I'd like to direct to our city attorney, because I spend a lot of time reading through the charter and also through the code, our city code. And there seems to be this narrative around grant processes pertaining to the city of Bowie and people being under the impression that the only grant process pertains to a committee. Now, it is my understanding that there is no committee within the city of Bowie that has the fiduciary power to spend city government money. And the only thing they do is are able to make a recommendation to the city council. So my question to you is if you could clarify in the code, because I've searched the charter and the code both. I'm not seeing it. My question to you is there a grant process in the charter that applies to the entire city body or the city government, and that is our one process that we go by for any grant within the city of Bowie.
I will have to say that I have not done a search of the charter to be able to answer that question in full, but I would like to ask the city manager, I mean, I'm not aware of any, but I would ask him if he is aware of any as well.
There are no, well, they wouldn't be addressed in the charter to begin with. It would be in the codes if it existed. And there are no references to specific grant programs in the codes. However, every grant program that exists currently, when the council established it with the criteria, such as planting a tree and others. The ring, if you have the cameras installed and you can demonstrate that you've done it, then you get a grant like that. And the same thing we were doing with the water system issue. So you all established what the criteria is when you set forth the grant. That's been the practice here.
Thank you, City Manager.
Let me just ask one more follow-up question. Is there, and thank you for that clarification, Mr. City Manager, is there something stated in the code that states that a council member cannot bring forth a program for discussion? Is there any stipulations or rules around that?
No.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Any other comments? I see
Yes.
Councilmember Truesdale and then Councilman at-large Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, what kind of document is required from the nonprofits prior to handing out grant money?
As I mentioned before, the first thing has to happen is the council has to establish the grant program in its existence. And once you establish that, you set the criteria for what documents will be required. And that would be through a discussion between staff and you all. We go back and work up the program, bring it back to you, and you bless it one way or the other. And so, among other things, we would want to see, we would want to enter into an agreement that would protect the city from risks and liabilities. The organization would have to be in good standing with the state of Maryland, that sort of thing, and would have to demonstrate that to us. But all those things would be incorporated in the agreement that should be listed in the resolution. But that documentation, those requirements are established by the City Council.
Okay. One more question. The original request for the grant was $17K, and I'm not sure why Councilman Esteve made the motion for 25. I'm not sure if he misunderstood the request, but is there any way that, the original amount of this offering could be reviewed?
In the packet that should have been before you all last 2 weeks ago, it was specifically stipulated that the grant amount would be $25,000. Okay. So, and you can take that short term if you like. I'll have the clerk refresh your memory with that document.
Thank you. Councilman Gardner? Councilman Truesdale, you were finished, right? Okay, Councilman Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everyone again for coming out this evening. Folks, okay, I'm learning, I'm a dinosaur of all technology. Okay, I really am. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question this evening of both staff, but also of the program leaders. Ma'am, if you would, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. I wrote it down, but yes, please, if you may. I have a question. It was one of our residents, Ms. Sue Rivera, came up earlier, and Sue is someone that I do listen and take some steps from the point of, thank you, Sue, for this question. She made a statement about previous
possible mismanagement of funds. And I just want to ask if we could address that.
So Art, Play, Learn has never applied for, received, or been denied for a Bowie City grant.
Okay.
And primarily, to speak to some of the other comments that have been made, it has a lot to do with the size of the grants that are offered. It's not worth the admin time to prepare all of the documentation for up to $5,000, to be honest.
I understand that. I do.
So, and I agree with you absolutely that it would be useful for us to all get together, industry, council, and come up with some kind of process that is better than what we have right now. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to, if someone could address, I want to get some meat on that question.
So the statement was made that we had applied for 2 grants.
Yes.
And so 5 or 6 years ago, we applied for a grant with the Community Outreach Committee. And then about 2 years ago, we applied with the Education Grant Committee or Education Committee. And so we had 3 interviews with the Education Committee. On the 3rd interview, it was myself and the Education Committee Chair and 2 other people, as well as my business development person. And in that meeting, what they wanted us to do was to buy individual licenses, software licenses for all of the students that would participate in our program. I was opposed to spending the money on that specifically, just because of the fact that we run a free program, the way we were doing it, there's no guarantee that the same child is going to return every single time you have programming. I wanted to do community licenses so that whether if Henri came this time, it didn't come the next time, but Clinton came this time, right? We could still use the same licenses. They were opposed to that, and that's why they did not give us the grant.
So it wasn't mismanagement?
No.
Okay, see, that's how.
And I would have thought that, again, it was 3 different interviews.
Yeah, so that's what, I'm so happy that you came up and I asked that question, because this is how rumors spread and they grow life in the community. And I know Sue wants to get to the bottom of things. She doesn't want any rumors associated with herself and rumors and lies. And because, first of all, I thank you both for being Bowie residents and reinvesting in your community, because that's important. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. I do believe that this is a good program, and I want to address our friend Les in the audience. Prince George's County Public Schools does not always distribute funding correctly as in a need. And being that we are Bowie and in our zip codes, we have a substantial higher income than other parts of the county. So they don't necessarily feel that we have a need here. So they may sprinkle it in lesser zip codes that have less financial resources. So oftentimes Bowie is neglected on those, but on the basis that our households have higher income, but it actually averages out because our house values have a higher value, which means we have a higher mortgage, a substantially higher mortgage. And the average mortgage here in Bowie right now is close to $3,200 monthly, when in other zip codes in the county, it's about $1,600, almost 50% less. So oftentimes, Bowie households are challenged financially when others may assume they're not because of the income, but you know the term, house poor. Yes, house poor. And we do have a number of families who are challenged. And just as the young lady who came up and said she has 4 children, I really needed to hear that. I needed to hear that. And I did get some of those letters and some of those emails and phone calls from some of your members. I really want to hear where these things have impacted families for the better. And seriously, if it's $1, if it's $25,000, that one person or that one group that is impacted for the better, I love it. And speaking to all of everyone who say it tonight, we want to reduce crime. An idle mind is a devil's workshop, and we know the saying. So I really think that it is important to Bowie council members to being responsive to the needs of its community. We are a changed community. We are not two household incomes as we were previously. We are a household that typically, we're not one income, we're two household incomes. So it takes two families, both spouses to work. So you need these after-school programs in place. You need these things in place. I thank you all for coming out. I hear about the process. I totally agree. We do, and Councilmember Steph, I applaud you on the process. I just think we could tone it down just a little bit because it's the messaging that we have to communicate to our neighbors, our friends and things, because all of us here are volunteering our time. These jobs are not jobs. I mean, if you take the hourly wage of all of us, we may make 35 cents on the hour. Okay? Seriously, or less. I may seriously, I'm at a huge deficit. It prevents me, sitting on this council prevents me in many occasions from making money, okay? So I on a personal note, I think that this is a great program. It's a reinvestment in our community. We have a number of realtors. In fact, Yolanda Muckle, who's president of the Maryland Realtors Association, who chairs our EDC, she shared with me that the number of households in the city of Bowie has changed dramatically. This is a great selling point to where any one of us who listed our homes for sale could say, hey, the city of Bowie also has access to free afternoon childcare. That's huge. It's huge. I applaud my council in working together in that. Thank you, Councilmember Wolfley, on that as well. And but Mayor Pro Tem and Devamadu for being always forward-thinking and innovative, because we do have to meet the needs of our changed community. My household is different. It's just me and sometimes Mom and my dog Charlie. Your household, 4 children, single mother, working hard each day. Every household is different. So you too are a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer. Some people say, I don't want my tax dollars going to schools because I don't have children. But it doesn't work that way. We all make a contribution and it's spread across to assist the mass population. And again, I thank you both for coming out here. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name, so do I get a chance to talk?
Yes, you do, my friend. Well, hold on. I don't know. I'm sorry. This is the
What are
mayor
you-
speaking. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You know,
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We may be going out. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
yeah, you're taking us out of protocol.
I am. Yes, sir.
This
But-
isn't about crime, it's about education, okay?
Yes, sir.
And PG County needs to pay for this, not the city of Bowie. I think the premise is great, and I think it should go forward, but I think PG County should pay for it. We're not budgeted for this. I mean, you guys voted for this budget. Now you want to amend it. I mean, come on, give me a break. Okay, let's get PG County to pay for that. If PG County isn't doing what they should for education, get on your horse, go down there and tell them that, and I'll go with you, okay?
I may call you. We have an issue now.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you, Les.
Are you concluded?
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I concluded. I'm safe.
Okay. Any other council members? Any other council members? Yeah. Because I think you spoke already. So you get to speak after everyone has made their rounds. Okay, go ahead, please, Council.
I just want to thank Ms. Kunitz and Mr. Montgomery for coming out tonight. I for one know that, Mr. Montgomery, you're a longtime member of the community. I know you've been involved for a long time. And I just want to say I have no concerns or issues whatsoever with how you would manage this program. I think what you do is excellent work. I think your partnership here is a really fantastic idea. And I was very happy to make a motion last week to bring this budget amendment and this a grant agreement to discussion. I did raise some concerns. I mean, we talked last week at our meeting about some concerns, some questions I have about process. It's true. I mean, council members can at any time during the year propose new programs. That's not unusual. I think what is unusual And something after our meeting last week that I had 2 messages for waiting for me at home, which brought up, and then I heard a lot of things the remainder of that week from residents who saw the meeting and had some concerns about process, was that, for just about all of our grants are designed, and this is true of best practices in grant writing in general, usually when you create a grant, especially for a program larger than what you would normally fund, you're going to set up a program, you're going to budget it, you're going to assign staff to administer it, but then you're going to open it up to the community, and you'll get applications from a lot of different groups who will apply, who will submit proposals, and we'll have the opportunity to review those proposals and pick whoever offers essentially the best deal and is best able to meet the requirements laid out. And that's something we didn't really get into a lot of detail about last week. It is a concern that I had. And I will say, I think one of the things that I heard a lot from residents and from the moment I got home until, into this week was simply a concern that there's a lot of nonprofits that operate in the city that do different types of programs aimed at young people, after school hours. And a theme that kept coming up was I had organizations reaching out saying, I'm applying right now for an outreach grant. I'm applying right now for an education grant. And it's a lot of paperwork and it's not a lot of money. And it just felt to a lot of groups that they had been neglected, right? They had not been included in conversations, when we were looking to evidently stand up, a program that would provide after-school services. And so for me, that kind of forced me to go back a little bit and think a little bit harder about this. I think what you do is great work. I do hear the comments from some residents that maybe it may make more sense for the county to stand this up. Last week, my initial motion, which we discussed, was to have city staff sit down with the county and try and identify funding sources for the initial program and going forward that would, allow this type of program to serve as many kids as possible. I totally hear what Mayor Pro Tem Ndebumadu is saying and Councilmember Gardner is saying. I get it. There's lots of people out there who would stand to benefit from this. I mean, there is no doubt when you stand up a program that keeps kids busy, is it twice a week you guys are doing this? Or yeah. So even twice a week, an awful lot of parents are grateful that their kids are doing something else. Even if they have to drive, down to Pointer Ridge on the other side of town, a lot of parents are grateful for that. And I get it. But I do think there is a legitimate question about why we didn't open this up and why this was maybe a little bit last minute. And I get that. And I think everyone in this process has been well-intentioned. I don't think that's an issue at all. I just think that a lot of people in the community, some of whom who've stood up nonprofits 3 years ago and started applying for grants, some who've been around for 30 years and have been involved in this process, many kind of reached out with the same reaction, which is, guys, if you want to do this, you got to open it up to the public. You can't just pick one group and directly support them because it's not necessarily fair to everyone else, and it's not necessarily kind of best practice in approaching grants. That's not on you. That's on us to figure out. The only other thing is I did reach out last week. I hear the concerns that folks have raised about crime, about concern with what kids are doing with their free time. I think that's an incredibly valid and urgent concern. I mean, we've seen with ATV riders, we've seen with kids coming around. It's been happening for 30 years now, but we've gotten new waves of it, of kids coming around and pulling the car door handles and trying to take things out of cars. We've seen that on and off over the years. We've noticed a lot of it this year. Those are all very legitimate concerns. One thing that we've heard a lot from our law enforcement professionals in recent years, though, is that most of the serious crime being committed along those lines are typically being committed from kids who are not from this area. They're coming in from DC, they're coming in from Baltimore. We've heard this for 30 years now. Whenever they apprehend suspects, they're almost always running with a fairly organized group, and they always say the same thing: we come to Bowie because you guys have nice stuff and you don't lock your car doors. And that's not to say there's no local homegrown crime. It's just not as pervasive. It's not where the major problem is. I also reached out to some PTA officials. I reached out to some folks who were involved with Bowie High for a long time. I reached out to some public educators in the area. And what a lot of them had to say was, while programs like this are great, and it's always wonderful to do more things for the kids, these programs aren't necessarily really a panacea when it comes to curbing things like crime. That those things tend to be big picture, regional problems, complicated, deep-seated things, and that very often when you stand up programs targeted at youth like this, typically you'll get students whose parents are fairly engaged. You're going to get students who want to be there for the most part. And very often, while you might very well serve some students who would otherwise be doing the wrong thing with their time, most of the students who are going to participate are probably not going to be the most at-risk youth. They're not going to be the youth who are most likely to be out otherwise spending their time getting involved in more serious issues. And that's something that came up a lot in my conversations talking with parents and teacher organizations in the last couple weeks, just trying to get a sense of this issue of crime. And so all this is to say, I really do think you do good work. I don't doubt that it would benefit every single kid who participated in the program. I do think there's a question, though, of if we start issuing grants to individual groups without opening up the process, and if we do it in this kind of open-ended way, we are kind of opening the floodgates a little bit. I went through my inbox. We get hit up by great organizations all the time. Nonprofits, companies, third parties, charity groups, mentoring groups that all want government support. And that's not unusual, right? We're here, we're a government, we have money, we have a tax base. But I think we have to be a little bit more, clearer in our process about how we're choosing to say yes and how we're choosing to say no. I think it's a temptation of all people in elected office to want to say yes to everything, right? Especially if it's a program that sounds great and does really good work. But I do think as a group, we need to be a little bit more thoughtful about how we do this going forward and just make sure that we're not kind of just picking out one group, giving them a whole program and saying no to everyone else. I think we have to be a little bit more careful. That being said, I'm not sure that I'm prepared to support this tonight. And it's nothing against you guys. But after the feedback I've gotten from the night of our meeting on, I do think that if we're serious about this and we really want to do something systemically for Bowie youth, we have a budget process. I think we should take it up in our budget guidance next year. I think we should say we want to stand up a program that does X, Y, and Z. We're willing to budget it X amount. We'll assign this staff to the work, or we'll give it to this committee or this agency or this department, however we want to do it. And then we can budget it and then we can put it out. And different nonprofits that want to participate can apply and we can have that discussion. I think that's probably going to be best going forward. That being said,
Thank you.
I do appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Councilman. I think, Mayor Pro Tem, did you have anything you wanted to say? No? Let me. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given, and this is a question for staff, given the concerns about the vetting process and transparency, we want to make sure everything is on the up and up if we're going to move forward with this. Is there a way or some type of mechanism to ensure the proper vetting, transparency through this process? And share it with the public, sorry.
Oh, well, I think we historically do that with, once you all establish a policy and establish the criteria for the grants. And of course, we have our committees that take those applications, vet them for us, and bring them back to you all for approval. So there is something in existence now that we use. Also, we do have a practice for anything over $50,000, we bid it out. That is almost 7 years since I've been here. And when things are under $25,000, it is our practice to get at least 2 or 3 quotes, but not go through a bidding process. But
Thank you, sir.
With such short notice, it's tough to vet, but we've done some.
Thank you, City Manager. At this time, I think for us to move forward, and what we're going to do. Huh?
They've set up the obligations, so they have to meet these obligations in order for us to do anything. So just wanted to clarify.
Oh, you want to clarify that? Go right ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that I wanted to share was that once we did decide as a council last week to move forward, staff did develop obligations that would need to be met for this program in order for it to continue. Those obligations have been publicly advertised in the council packet. So for people's questions around governance or certain parameters or mechanisms to make sure that we ensure the viability of the program, the integrity of the organization, and so forth, those stipulations have been clearly outlined by our city attorney as well as staff in the contract that has been publicly advertised that would have to, in these stipulations, it's A through H. I won't read them all out to you this evening because they're pretty lengthy, but they have to meet these stipulations in order for this to move forward. So I just want to be clear that there have been stipulations and additional obligations of the grantee. That's number 7 on page, I think this is on page number 2. So if you're looking at the actual contract and the agreement for fiscal year 2024, that's number 2, page 2, number 7. The additional obligations are listed there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Having no other questions at this time, I will declare the public hearing closed. I will entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to just get the correct wording so I say this absolutely appropriately. I would, one, like to make a motion to change this from being funded, from an emergency ordinance to make it a normal budget ordinance.
Okay, so what we have for other people to understand what's going on and just being very candid, we heard Councilman Estelle saying he would not support this tonight. For us to move forward with this as an emergency ordinance, we would need unanimous support on that. Hearing that that is not going to happen, I think what Councilwoman Madhu, Mayor Pro Tem, is saying is that we should move this into the ordinary ordinance process to do this. So, Madam City Attorney, is that correct?
So yes, there are 3 aspects to the ordinance that are before you. One is it's declared an emergency ordinance for the purposes of introduction and adoption on the same night. And when you look at your charter, section 12, in order to, in cases of emergency determined by the council, the waiting period may be suspended by a unanimous vote of the members of council who are present. So that was one aspect. The other aspect is that it would become effective immediately upon adoption, which requires a vote of 2/3 of the legislative body. And then because it's a budget adoption, the state law applies too and requires a 2/3 vote of council as well. So if you want to remove the emergency provision and make it a regular ordinance, if you will, that would be processed in the standard course, we would delete emergency from the title, and then at the bottom of the first page, where there is a reference to section 12 of the charter that I just read, as well as the next whereas clause regarding section 12, and the final one that declares it an emergency, those would be removed. And so if you were to adopt it with those amendments, then it would come back to you as an amended ordinance for adoption at the next meeting.
Okay.
So based on that, do you need me to
Are you making that, you're making that motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am. Do you need me to restate it? But I think
City Attorney? Excuse me. So City Attorney,
Sir?
she's making an amendment, a motion to amend it
Yes.
at this time. So we do need to take a vote on that, correct?
I would,
To amend.
yes, I would move to amend the ordinance, and then it would be introduced as amended.
Okay.
Unless, now, and I hate to keep deferring to others around me, but I'm going to ask the city clerk whether that process is acceptable, or is there a different one that you've utilized in the past?
We have not, I mean, that would amend that part of it.
Correct.
The only thing is, if you want it to become effective at the next meeting, meaning that we don't have to wait the 30 days where a standard ordinance takes effect, that will still need to be a 2/3 vote so that it becomes effective at the October 2nd meeting.
Okay.
You won't have the aspect of it being unanimous to be introduced and adopted at the same meeting, but you will need still a 2/3 vote, even if we move it to the October 2nd, so that the funds are available effective that same night that it gets
I see
adopted.
the city attorney raising a finger. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that if that is the direction in which you want to move and not make it truly a standard ordinance, then you would retain in the title emergency and retain the whereas clause at the top of the second page that talks about it becoming effective upon a vote of 2/3 of the members of the legislative body. But I thought what was being considered was really making it not an emergency ordinance and having it be in the normal course. So I would ask for clarification from the council as to whether they want it to be an introduction tonight with adoption at the next meeting and effective immediately, or whether it's going to wait that normal 30-day period for its effective date.
I would like to council comments. Are we fine with?
I'm good, yes.
We're good with that, as in waiting till next meeting? And bear with me, everyone, as we work through this.
Hold on.
So-
Go ahead, I'm listening.
All right, so what we're saying tonight is, we will leave it, the emergency part, but only to the extent that it become effective upon our next meeting if we approve it, correct? And it would become immediate in process, is that correct?
So introduced tonight, adopted it at the October meeting. If you retain the emergency provision that requires the 2/3 vote for it to become effective at that October meeting.
Okay,
Otherwise, it becomes effective 30 days after the date of its adoption, like a standard ordinance would be.
okay. Any discussion?
And that equals 5 votes.
So, I think. All right, I will entertain that motion. The Mayor Pro Tem put in a motion that we treat it as not an emergency motion to be put into effect tonight, but that we treat it as a ordinance that we could still vote on whether or not, as an emergency ordinance, and whether or not it becomes effective at our October meeting. Is that correct? I'm just trying to make sure we get it straight, so.
Yes, so if you would like for it to become effective at the October meeting, then we would retain the emergency in the title, and we would retain the one provision that requires a 2/3 vote of the elected body in order for it to become effective that night.
Okay. I will make this comment as part of the discussion. I would ask staff, and I think everybody here would agree, I would ask staff to do a review of the organization, as we've heard some conflicting stories about what it is, and have us do a review to make sure that what we're hearing tonight is what happened, that we hear that we do not make it effective tonight, that we look at voting as an ordinance and then come back and have a vetting from the city staff to make sure everything is legitimate. And I think that way we can address it from a standpoint of not making an emergency ordinance tonight and effective tonight, but keeping that effective so that we can try and get it going within the school year this fall, and have the feedback from our city staff as to whether the legitimacy, I'm sorry, that's the process though. You know, and we need to vet you. I mean, that's.
Mr. Mayor?
That's how it works.
Mr. Mayor?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My question,
Who's going first? You're next. He's deferring to you, but.
do you want to go? Okay. So my question is for our city attorney. Just a quick question from my understanding of, how you guys approach this process. When you were establishing the grant agreement and you came up with like the additional guidelines and you kind of were doing your research, what process did you take at that time? Like, did you or did you not? Like, didn't you put the organization's information into the state of Maryland tools to find out if they were in good standing to even be able to draft an agreement in the first? Like, I guess I'm trying to understand what process you took and if that was a part of it to even get to this point. Does that make sense? Does my question make sense?
Your question does make sense. And I will have to say that Alyssa Levan is the one who drafted the agreement. I believe it is fashioned after other grant agreements that the city has used. And with respect to whether or not she had checked with SDAT to determine whether they are in good standing, I can't answer that question at this time. I can look that up myself if you'd like.
Do you know how long would that take you to look up? Because I know that she did, but I just want to make sure that you can also do that additional due diligence should you need to, because my understanding is that in order for us to even get to this point, you would have to look them up in SDAT for you to even be able to draft the agreement or even advise us to have an agreement for us to even get to this point. I guess I'm just trying to understand the process for myself in my own education. And then I guess while you're doing that, there's only just one more statement that I want to make really quickly because it's just an observation that I made, and I think it's important. I know nobody here, well, I'd like to assume here that nobody has negative intent, but I just want us to be mindful about the way that we interact with each other. Rumors can be very damaging to people's careers and to people's livelihoods. And I'm not targeting that at you, Sue, whatsoever. I know you're doing your due diligence, but I'm just saying that for us as a body, when we can disagree on things, we can agree to disagree. But I think it's very important that we set the precedent of respect and really just working together and figuring out a more collaborative nature, because all of us have the right intent. All are trying to do the best that we can to represent the districts in which we serve. But I think when rumors start to brew, it can be very, very disparaging to other people's careers or their livelihood. I know my mother sitting here in the audience, she sacrificed so much for me to get to this position. And now I'm in a place to be able to provide for her and take care of our family. And so when you have small rumors that become murmurs that are inaccurate, it can really tarnish the reputation in someone and take a very, very long time to rebuild what somebody has worked, like myself in my case, 30 years to really stand on. So I just want us to be mindful as a body going forward, because so many communities are watching us, kids are watching us, adults are watching us, businesses are watching us, educational institutions are watching us, organizations are watching us, and that just sets the incorrect precedent that I don't believe that we intend to set. So I just wanted to clarify that while Miss Attorney was looking in SDAT to answer my question, or Mr. City Manager.
Thank you so much, Madam Pro Tem. I think one of the things that I'd like to clarify at this moment is that one of the things that happens is when we do ordinances and we move fast on them, the city staff doesn't make a determination, we do. We as a council decide if we want to give a grant to a certain organization, that isn't the city staff. But what we can do is request the staff to do vetting and to check on those things for it. But if we direct, as a council, what we want to have done, staff simply implements what we want to have done.
Mr. Mayor.
So I think that may answer a part of that, correct?
Let me help you out, Mr. Mayor. If you all introduce this ordinance as an emergency without implementation immediately, and it comes back in October, I can promise you by then, we will have vetted this organization more than sufficiently. Right now, we're having troubles with the getting to their scheduled maintenance on the state's website. But I think there's some significant vetting that we can do here in Bowie. And then that would, and the results would be in your packet.
Yes, okay. Thank you, City Manager. Councilman Dufour?
Mr. Mayor, in light of where we are in the meeting and whatnot, I think probably I think the best thing to do is, as we've said here, is to remand this back to staff to do their due diligence on the applicants, if that's what they are, applicants for the grant, and then perhaps to rewrite the ordinance so that it matches the necessary language so that we're not conflating emergencies and non-emergencies. So if that's what people are interested in doing, then maybe we could allow staff to do that for us, and I would make a motion to table this until our next meeting so that we can move on with the rest of the agenda.
I heard that, but I think what the motion was made to actually follow where we're going now, still have staff report back to us and not take a vote or have to, or up and down on it when we come back in October. I think we accomplished the same thing of having them vetting it out and the whole bit without pushing it back too far. If they're vetted and that's something that we can immediately get moving forward with, because we'll still have to approve the funding and all of that. We'll still have to do those things. So I think I'd like to see us kind of leave it where it, with the emergency, so that when we come back in October, if it's a good program, because we'll be pushing November with the kids, and if it's something that we can do positive, Councilman, I think that would work. And I think it'll give us a very good vetting. It will give us an open opportunity for everyone to hear what's going forward, as we've heard from those who have come forward and saying this way, it would still be as we would handle in general normal ordinance, except we would be saying, okay, if everything is good, we can immediately get started with it before the holidays. And that's what I'm saying. And that means we can get it going in October, hopefully get it going by November or December, and actually start tracking to see if it's something else we want to do. That's kind of how I see it, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, but I think we're saying the same thing if we table it so that we don't, so that that can happen.
Well, what I'm saying is we vote on it and with the changes that are there, so they could go back and rewrite it. If we vote tonight, they're gonna change the language, and we can vote on that tonight. Okay, so with that discussion, we have the city attorney. You have the understanding of where we're going with this, what the motion was, as you said?
It is my understanding that you're going to move forward with it as an emergency, but remove the provision that it be introduced and adopted tonight.
Yes. And city manager, you understand we're looking for you to be able to vet the organization and give us feedback on that as well, when we come back for a vote on that in October.
I'm looking forward to it, Mr. Mayor. We're ready to do it.
Ready? All right. All right, if we're all on the page with that, at this time, I will make the motion as stated by the city attorney, and we'll seek a second.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
Mayor, I'm
yes.
sorry. I know Mayor Pro Tem made the motion to amend it with taking off the emergency aspect of being introduced and adopted tonight, but nobody has seconded her motion.
Okay, so sounds like I derailed that. You, what was the motion you made? They were saying that you had a different motion.
No, I'm just saying that she didn't have, there's not a second to her initial motion.
She made a motion.
It's fine, we can move past it.
If there's no second, the motion dies.
There wasn't a discussion.
Is there a new motion?
There wasn't a new motion.
Mr. Mayor, there was a
Yeah.
motion, there was no second, it died.
No, we had a second.
Mr. Mayor? For your motion, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let us move forward with the vote. At this time, all in favor, please respond with an aye. 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 Opposed, same favor. Motion carries.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I need a raise of hands. I didn't get everybody's vote.
Okay. If you could, those who voted aye, those opposed, motion carries. Okay, at this time, we will now move on to the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie. A representative from this organization will present to council their programs, work, and discuss grant support.
Mr. Mayor, the applicant originally wanted to come and talk to council tonight. They have applied for a grant through the regular Community Outreach Committee process and have told me that they will not be coming this evening, as they were able to apply for the grant through the normal grant process with the Outreach Committee.
Thank you, sir. All right, we will now move on to the streetlight LED light bulb replacement. Staff will brief council on the different types of LED options and the cost to replace the current light bulbs.
Before Jose starts, Mr. Mayor, I think there were some complaints, the genesis here, by some residents in the vicinity of District 1 about the brightness of the replacement lights that are being placed in the streets. And there was a discussion, and Mr. Esther asked for Jose to come in and explain what we're doing and what it will cost to modify it and all that sort of thing. Jose, proceed.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, for the introduction and the context to this. In the Department of Public Works, we are treating every asset that the city has with the same approach. We're looking at the ones that are in dire need of making it better. And in the case of the street lights, we identified that North Ridge was that the area where the lights needed a lot of tender care. And identified about close to 300 lights that needed to be replaced. But 77 were pretty much very good candidates to get it done. When we contacted our vendor, the vendor informed my utility superintendent that the sodium lights were being outphased, so the manufacturer was not making it anymore. So, in that, because most of the communities are deciding to go with LED lights, which are, they last longer and they are more economic in terms of electricity use, which is a benefit to the city. We did not know at the time that each light comes with 3 settings at different voltages, and each setting is brighter than the next. So level 1 is very, very bright. Level 2, setting 2 is medium bright, and level 3 is the lowest, not as bright. Not only that, but we discovered that we can direction the light just towards the street and not inconvenience the residents. In terms of a cost, replacing the fixtures is $1,775 per light. The price includes the fixture and labor. The total of replacing the 77 lights is $136,675. If we will have to replace the other 270 fixtures, if we just do it, it will cost almost $500,000. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go through the approach to replacing the lights as needed in terms of we have an outage or we got a flicker. And just doing some simple math, I asked my superintendent for this meeting to just give me an idea what's in average, the number of outages that we get in the city that will need that kind of replacement. His answer is 150 outage or flickers per month. And so if we try to attend that, it will cost us $150,000 a month.
Okay. So if you could help me to understand, and I think it was Councilman Staff who brought this up. Councilman, is this something that's an issue? We were talking about moving the lights and other things. Could you just briefly give us just a kind of thumbnail on what the residents are feeling?
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the very short version is, as we've been moving to LEDs, people have suddenly discovered that LEDs are really bright, especially at nighttime, especially when they're on the large night lamps. And so I've heard from residents in Rolling Hills, in Northridge, and even outside of District 1, where we've replaced outdoor lights with LEDs, complaints that the lights are extremely bright. They are obnoxious to residents who are trying to sleep. I've heard from folks who are involved in like wildlife protection that apparently it screws up the animals in some way. But more importantly, a lot of residents have simply said that it just looks ugly. That walking down the streets where there used to be kind of the lighter, softer orange glow of the incandescents, streets just looked prettier at night. With the incandescents, I had one person who told me it looks like something out of a Black Mirror. It just looks gross. It's unpleasant. And so residents have said they don't want to live in a town where we have these ugly, bright white lights keeping people awake at night and just looking unpleasant at. So I asked staff to just take a look at, and if they needed to bring to us just what the prices would be. It sounds like we have the option of dimming lights. You're saying, Mr. Public Works Director, and you're saying it would be very expensive for us to change the color of the lights to orange. Okay. Have we had any conversations with BG&E in this process?
Not that I'm aware of it, but they are also going into LED lights. I had a meeting probably about 4 months ago with them, and this just happened to be, I did not know at the time that the sodium lights were being outphased. So I told them, I claimed the fifth on this one because I really don't know what we're doing. But then now, 5 months later, I get to learn all this. And to answer your question, per the city manager recommendation, we're doing both. We're not just doing dimming the lights, but we're also directing away from the residents' houses, and so they just will go through the street. And there is no cost, additional cost to do that. We'll do that, and I asked my superintendent, because he is the one that knows all about this, to actually go and test and do the smell test, to actually look at the lights and how they look before and how they look better now. And he said, Jose, I guarantee you that dimming the lights and redirecting the lights, it looks a lot better. And I haven't heard any complaints since.
That's great to hear. So that being said, it may also be worth, since BG I know is also involved in a lot of this, to maybe have the city manager's office just ping BG&E about this as well, maybe through a business relation person. Just to loop them in. It sounds like that you're in agreement. Okay.
Yes, sir.
If there's no objection from my colleagues.
Actually, you're talking about Ms. Masurdo. She's the contact with BGE, and she's the one that invited me to the meeting with BGE. So I'm going to take it upon myself to contact her tomorrow and let me know when the next meeting is going to be, so I can attend and my superintendent can attend, and we can just have a conversation about it.
That sounds great. So question for staff, do you need from us any direction on how to proceed then with regards to the dimming and the redirecting the lights away from homes and so on?
No, sir, we're already doing that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, team.
All right, thank you. Before, Councilman Wolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple quick questions on the lights. Is there a is there an ability to change the color temperature at all for the LED lights?
I don't think so, otherwise, because one of the main concerns was in terms of what they call warmth. They are not as
Yes.
warm as the other one, and I don't think we got any answer about that. I think it is what it is. I don't think that LED lights come in different colors, as far as I know, but again, I'll ask.
Thank you. I do know that there are some lights, some LED lights that allow you to adjust the color warmth or the coolness. I don't know that that's what is available in a street lamp. It's a far different item than what you might find for home use as well.
I understand.
Okay. And then with that in mind, I mean, there may also be an opportunity to put a different colored lens on the lamp itself, a filter effect, if you will, to warm the color, maybe a yellow lamp cover as opposed to a clear one. That might help. So if you could look into that, I don't know if that's viable or not, but that would be good too. And then the next question I have for you is, as we're going through, is this something that's going to happen throughout the city in other areas as lights fail, or is this just limited to District 1 at the moment?
No, the lights that go bad will be replaced with LED. That's the plan.
So we will have a street which will have different colored lights on it if you drive down the street, it'll be warm, 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 then cool blue, then back to warm, warm, cool blue. It'll be a mixed use then.
Yes, sir. And I think because the problem is not a choice that we're making, is the problem is that they're going to be very difficult to find something to match.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what we can get with the contractor.
Mm-hmm. Is there any opportunity here to tie in? I know we've done some work on improving the underground wiring for a lot of these lights because we've had failures, particularly in the older Levitt sections. Is there a opportunity to handle both at the same time?
Yes, sir. And the problem is, with asset management of this case is generally one is driven is the money. Mm-hmm. I just told you how much money you will need to replace just the lights. You multiply that times 5. That's the problem that you have trying to replace the deficient cable that the city has. Mm-hmm. So it's all about money.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know, keep up the good work. I noticed that this year, and I think perhaps it's because it wasn't as wet as prior years, we've had fewer cable failures. But the vendor who's been doing that, I think, has been doing a better job. At least I've been getting fewer complaints. Maybe that's not a good marker, but I do appreciate their efforts and your efforts to get those improved. Thank you.
Every Friday, I get a report about the number of incidents we have, so I can personally gauge, because I know this is important for the city, so I can gauge what the needs are and what needs to get done, because we have different activities that include painting, so I need to balance. That's part of my job, and in terms of asset management, to balance all those needs and just put the money where the real needs are.
And if I may, since I have you here, and it's completely off subject, other than we talked about it beforehand, I know we're looking for some replacement valves on the water pipe we spoke about earlier. Is that something where we can look at getting an inventory of replacement valves to have on hand so when one fails, we don't have to wait?
Yes, sir. We're looking into that, and be prepared to see that exact idea in the next budget proposal.
The way you say it sounds expensive.
Yes, sir. Everything is expensive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to make a couple of quick, taking a moment of personal privilege here, a couple of things I'd like to say. You know, we do have some wonderful youth here in the city of Bowie. And as we talk about education and we talk about trying to do things for them, it's not about criminality. It's not about just that. It's about us as a city wanting to have the best educated workforce that we can get. It's about making sure that our kids can excel in the future. And that's what we're looking at. Not accepting being second to last or last in the state every year. And I think we as a city have to step up. I understand that Prince George's school system has a responsibility to all of our kids. But I also believe we in Bowie need to make sure that whatever we can do to enhance our kids here, that we need to do that. You know, I felt very fortunate when I was able to fight and help get that universal pre-K, additional kids here in the city of Bowie. And you would be amazed at how many people called me and were appreciative of that. Because of our cost of living, they wouldn't qualify otherwise. But they were able to be financially able to put their schools in this universal pre-K. And I think we as a city have got to be able to understand that we can't just wait on them. As much as it may be right that we should, or we shouldn't have to do anything else, we have a responsibility to our kids here in the city of Bowie as well. And you're right, we need to push them. We need to try to get all the resources we can that our children are due. But as a city, we've also got to embrace that whatever that backstop is that we need to do for them, and I'm not talking about any particular program, I'm talking about in general, we need to do that. Our children deserve that. Our city deserves that. The businesses that come here deserve that well-educated workforce. And that's what we all have to fight towards. So having said that, I would also say, City Manager, we've got to do, and I think the question with the LED lights and how that go, I think that's one of those issues where, you know, we pushed real hard to get LED lights because we thought they would last longer, it would cut down on costs and all of that, that we would be helping our environment more. But that goes back to one of those things we have to balance about the quality of life for our citizens here in the city. So, you know, there aren't any real easy answers, but I think if we all work together, we can solve them. We can find that happy medium. And on that note, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, before you do that, the city attorney has something to say.
I hate to ask you this question. I'm going to ask you to revisit item 11B, which was ordinance 01223, to just clarify that you introduced that ordinance as amended. That was your intention, correct?
Correct. I couldn't hear you.
Well, the city attorney is satisfied, and I proceed with the meeting.
We're good?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I'll still entertain that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn and move to closed session, to adjourn to closed session under statutory authority of Maryland Annotated General Code and Maryland Annotated Code, General Provisions, Article subsection 3-305B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carried. I'd like to thank everyone here in council chambers. I'd like to thank the citizens who have watched us on air. I'd like to thank our city staff and everyone for all you do. And I'd like to thank our council. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
We're taking on education now.